Hi everyone, this is Monique, and today I will be recording my first project as part of the Wild Bunch YouTube design team for Wild Orchid Crafts. Before I get started, I just want to thank Wild Orchid Crafts for the opportunity to design for you, and also to the Wild Bunch design team for the warm welcome you gave to all us new ladies. Okay, so let's get started. So all of you who are familiar with my design style know that I love to incorporate metal elements into my designs. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you how to take all the beautiful metal embellishments that you can get at Wild Orchid Crafts and alter them to create beautiful flowers for your project. And a lot of these flowers will add dimension but not too much bulk to your projects. So if you love making mini albums like I do, this project would be perfect for you. So aside from the supplies for the flowers, you're also going to need a pair of flush cutters, a pair of bent chain nose pliers, and some really good adhesive for using with metal. So the first flower we're going to make is this little guy. Now to make this flower, I used the JW00005 Filigree Silver Square decoration. To make this next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the gold one. So the gold square is the same design, same size. Product number is JW00006, and that's the Filigree Gold Square decoration. So the first thing you need to do is you want to fold the four corners under, and in order to do that you have to clip your metal embellishment here and here on all four sides. So because I'm right-handed, I'm just going to do these four, and then I'm going to flip it over just to make it easier for me. Now what you need to do is just fold the four corners under, and these things are really pliable and easy to bend with your hands, as you can see. So now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm just going to squeeze down on those four locations where we bent those corners under, just so that they're nice and flat. See how nice and flat those are compared to these? I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but so there you go, and you can see now that these are going to be the four petals on our flower. So what I do is I take my chain nose pliers, and what I'm doing is I'm creating a line with the nose of the pliers so that I get a nice fairly straight crease, and I'm bending up on all four petals, fairly close to the center. So that should create a little cup. So now what I do is I take my pliers and I bend each petal, the corners of each petal, down sideways, and I put, what I want to create kind of a point in the center of each petal. So I'm going to put my pliers kind of at an angle and bend down. Now in doing that, it's kind of flattened out my flower, so sometimes what I do is I just take my pliers back in at the base of the petal and curl them up a little bit if I want to create more of a cup look. So now all that's left to do is to layer this beautiful little metal flower with other blooms. So actually for this flower I'm going to choose to use These are the white blooms that are 1 1/4 inch in diameter. The code is BM00038. For this flower here, I actually used one of these and layered it with one of the white blooms that's only 1 inch in diameter, BM00040. So rather than just leaving the blooms white, I like to alter them and change their color. So the first thing I like to do is I like to take Distress Ink color, and today I'm using Walnut Stain, and I just go directly from pad onto the bloom, and I just lightly add a little bit of ink. After I'm done that, I'm going to add some color, and I'm going to use my Lindy sprays. And I like to use a couple of different colors. Again, layering different colors will add more dimension to your projects. So this first color is Tainted Love Teal. The second color I'm going to use is the new Whale Watch Blue. Just to speed things up a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry these with my heat tool. I don't like working with the blooms while they're a little bit wet because sometimes they flatten out and they lose some of their dimension. Okay, now that my blooms are dry, we're ready to put this flower together. And quite often what I'll do is I'll punch a little circle so that it's easier to adhere things together. So I'm going to add a couple of different flowers and a flower center from. These are just flat back pearls from my stash. So now we're going to need some good adhesive for adhering metal, and just use a little bit because otherwise you'll be waiting a very long time for your flower to dry. And you'll find with these flowers, the bottom of this metal embellishment is cupped, so quite often what I found I had to do in order to stick it down was pick up my blooms and actually squeeze the center. And when I attach the flat back pearls, I just feel better putting a little bit of glue in there, and of course because I'm gluing it to metal, I'm going to use my glue for metals. Actually, I like using a pair of I like using a pair of tweezers to place my pearl down. So that'll just take a minute to dry, but our flower's finished. So 2 beautiful tiny flowers, very different looks just by changing up the color a little bit. So the next flower I'm going to show you how to make is this one here, which is, I think, my favorite of the 3. The metal embellishment that I used to create this was the antique gold square embellishment, item number JW00012. I also used one of the 1 1/4 inch blooms that I showed you while making the first video. On the base here, I've used some 1 3/4 inch diameter blooms, and unfortunately these are blooms that I received as a gift with one of my Wild Orchid Crafts orders, and I'm not sure of the code, I couldn't find it online, but as long as you use a bloom that's 1 3/4 inches in diameter, it'll look great. I also used one of these gold crystal drops on gold stems, item number CR00008. for the leaves I used the dark brown skeleton leaves, LL00033, and these I believe are a new product in the store. And then I just used a brad from my stash for the center. So for the flower I'm going to show you, we're again going to use 2 of these 1 3/4 inch diameter blooms. We need 2 of the antique gold square embellishments. I'm going to use 2 of the dark brown skeleton leaves again. This time I am going to use the black crystal drops on silver stems, and the item number for that is CR00002. For the center, rather than using a bloom, I'm going to use, this is 1 rosette from the black organza rose trim, the small one here. So what I did was I just cut one of the flowers off the end, and the item number on this is OZ00017. And lastly, I'm going to use just a rhinestone brad from my stash. Oh, and don't forget the circle. This here I believe is a 1.5 inch diameter circle. So I'm just going to set these items aside here and show you how to alter these metal squares. So the first one I'm going to make is the bottom. So what we have to do is be careful to leave enough room to stack the other one on top without leaving a really large gap. And what I'm going to do is use the 4 corners as the bottom petals, and this center square will be the flat area. So I'm going to put my chain nose pliers with the nose lined up along the edge of this square and bend up. Do this for all 4 corners. Now the next thing I do is similar to what I did for the first one, is I fold both sides of each petal over. So what I'm doing is I just want this outer edge bent over. And I'll go around the outside. And then I'm going to turn my pliers over and bend the opposite side of each petal down. And the last thing I want to do is grab the tip and just bend it straight out, because you'll find sometimes they look like they're at a bit of an angle. So that's your bottom layer. So for the second layer, we're going to have to have the flat spot in the center being smaller so that it'll sit nicely on the bottom layer. So the first thing I do is I actually bend these corners up here. So you don't have to be too particular. I just put my pliers kind of next to that heart looking design and bend it up. Next thing I do is I now want to bend each petal up, and I know it looks kind of awkward the way it's bent, but don't worry, it'll work out in the end. So I put my chain nose pliers, line it up with the base of the petal, and actually I want to go closer to the center this time and bend it up. So now we should have a smaller area that sits in the bottom quite nicely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the sides of each petal down and just bend the tip down. Now, like with the first flower, doing all this bending has kind of flattened it out a little bit. So I'm going to go back in and make sure that I've got a nice cup shape, particularly right here in the corners, because otherwise it's not going to sit in your bottom layer very well. And there you go. You can just kind of adjust your petals a little bit with your hands if you like. So that's our 2 layers. Now we're ready to layer everything together. And what I did for the crystal stems, you'll notice how far apart all the little crystals are. And I only use 3, so what I do is I cut the bottom 2 off as close to this 4th one on the stem as I can, and I can use that for another project. And then all I do to bring these crystals closer together is I grab the center one and twist it a little bit here. Oops, sorry, I twisted it the wrong way. You gotta make sure you're twisting it together, and you'll see as you twist, those crystals are gonna come closer together. I want this one to come up a little bit, so I'm gonna give it a twist or 2. There we go. And then I use my adhesive for metals. I'll just put a little bit on the stem here. And place that where I think I want it. Okay, so I'm just going to set that aside to dry for a bit while I layer my flower. So again, with these blooms, I'm going to add a little bit of Distress ink. And this time what I'm going to do, and I'm just using walnut stain here, is I'm going to use this finger dauber to add, because you get, I'm not going to spray this one, sorry, you get a softer color on the petals, looks much more natural. Now all we have to do is use our brad to put these layers together. So now all that I need to do is to add a bit of all-purpose glue in the center here, or a lot, and glue your flower down. And there you have it. So for this last flower I wanted to do something a little bit different. And although flowers are beautiful, sometimes it's nice to have metal leaves. So for this particular flower I used the gold square decorations, 2 of them. That's JW00006. I also used one of the 1 3/8 inch or 35 millimeter trellis roses, and this is from the mixed white cream tone trellis rose pack, which is FM00377, so it's one of these yellow ones. And for the sides here I used 2 of the white tulip flowers. And I actually had bought the 10 pack FS00079, but you can now get these white tulips in a bumper pack, which includes 50 flowers, and the item number on that is PM00078. So this time I'm going to create silver leaves. So I'm using, again, these are the Silver Square Decorations JW00005, which are the same design, same dimension as the gold ones, just silver in color. And I've decided to use some different flowers. So I am going to use, this is a 1-inch wild rose, and I got this from the Mixed Two-Tone Color Wild Roses pack, PM00020. It's one of these green and yellow ones. And I'm also going to use 2 of these white paper closed rosebuds, the 1/4 inch, and the code on that is BUD067. And lastly, I'm going to use a circle. This one's a 1-inch diameter circle, so that it's easier to adhere everything down. So like with the first small flower, we're going to have to do some cutting. Instead of cutting all 4 corners though, we're just going to cut 2 corners that are opposite to one another. And then what I do is I fold those 2 corners down, and I use my chain nose pliers just to make them nice and flat. So this leaf, what I want is I'm going to want it to curl down. So the first thing I do is I kind of bend it in half lengthwise. Then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers at an angle and bend each side down, kind of like we did with the petals of the flower, and then bend the tip down. So that gives a nice leaf that curls down, and you could also just curl these edges down here if you'd like. And at the base, I actually fold it up just so that it's got a nice flat spot for the center of your flower to sit. So that's the first petal, or the first leaf, I mean. So the second one, again, we've got to cut the corners, 2 corners that are opposite each other, just like we did with the first one. Fold those under. Use your chain nose pliers to flatten it out. Again, we're going to bend it down the center. And this time, I want the tip of my leaf pointed up, but I'm still going to bend the sides here down. I'm going to bend these guys down a little bit as well. So I'm just going to add a little up curl to that. And again, at the base, just flatten it out so you have a nice place for your flower to sit. And then when you layer them, they're going to look like that. So I actually quite like the look of this flower just as is, so I'm going to leave it. For the rosebuds, I want to add a bit more dimension. So I'm going to add a little bit of frayed burlap distressing to the edges, and because I'm not going to spray them, I'm going to use a sponge dauber just to catch the edges of the leaves. Actually, for the rosebuds, I would recommend adding the color with the sponge dauber to the edges of the leaves, because or to the edges of the petals, because otherwise you're going to get a really harsh line of ink on them. So now what I did with this one is I took my 3 flowers and I kind of placed them where I liked the look of them. I usually liked having one of the rosebuds closer to the center flower than the other, and then I just twist the stems of the flowers together. Like so. And then what I do is I thread, oops, I'm going to keep twisting this, I thread this stem through the end of the leaf. So I'm going to put that one on, slide it all the way up to there, under the rose, take my other one, slide it on as well. So you can see my little flower cluster taking shape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of my adhesive to my 1-inch circle, and this adhesive is good for metal, but it'll also adhere the mulberry paper flowers. And I just take this and place it on the back so that it's hidden and hold it in place for just a minute or so until the glue adheres. So once your glue is dry, you can, adjust your flowers a little bit if required, and you can cut this stem off. So what I do is I just go in and I cut it right next to the circle. Oops. And there it goes. So there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed this project. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think of the tutorial. I'll also have a description of all the products that were used in this video down in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.